What if I told you that the most devastating loss in franchise history might actually be the catalyst that transforms the Toronto Blue Jays into baseball's next great dynasty? The raw, unfiltered agony of Game 7 still burns in the collective consciousness of Blue Jays Nation. That World Series defeat, their first Fall Classic appearance since Joe Carter immortalized himself in 1993, left scars that cut deeper than any regular season disappointment ever could. The dream was right there, tantalizingly close, only to slip through their fingers in the most excruciating fashion imaginable. But here's where the story takes a fascinating turn. As the bitter Canadian winter descends upon Toronto and fans struggle to process their shattered expectations, something remarkable is happening behind the closed doors of the Blue Jays front office. According to veteran MLB Insider Bob Nightengale, a journalist whose track record and connections make his predictions impossible to ignore, Toronto isn't licking its wounds. They're sharpening their claws. The Kyle Tucker bombshell. When prediction meets destiny during his recent appearance on the Blue Jays Today podcast, Nightengale didn't dance around the question. He didn't offer the typical insider hedging or diplomatic non-answers. Instead, he delivered a declaration that sent shockwaves through the baseball world. Kyle Tucker is coming to Toronto. That was my pick. Where does Tucker land? I think Toronto. Nightengale stated with the kind of conviction that makes executives nervous and fans ecstatic. And he's not alone in this assessment. Fellow MLB authority Jeff Passan shares this prediction, adding substantial credibility to what might otherwise seem like off-season speculation run amok. But let's dig deeper into the strategic brilliance of this potential acquisition, because this isn't just about adding another star to the roster. This is about surgical roster construction that addresses specific competitive deficiencies while maximizing existing strengths. Tucker represents something the Blue Jays desperately need, but rarely gets discussed in mainstream analysis: the perfect complementary superstar. Throughout his 8-season career split between the Houston Astros and Chicago Cubs, Tucker has thrived in environments where he wasn't required to be the guy. He's never needed to carry the offensive burden alone, never had to be the face of the franchise or the primary focus of opposing pitching staffs. Instead, he's flourished as the devastating second or third option, the player who punishes teams for pitching around the primary threat. I think he's a great supporting player, which I think fits perfectly in Toronto, Nightengale explained. With Vlad already there, it's perfect. Consider the strategic brilliance of this pairing for a moment. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. commands attention. His presence in the lineup forces impossible decisions from opposing managers and pitchers. Now, imagine Tucker, a left-handed bat with elite power, exceptional plate discipline, and gold glove caliber defense, hitting behind or ahead of Vlad. The nightmare scenario for American League pitching staffs practically writes itself. Tucker's more reserved personality also meshes ideally with Toronto's clubhouse culture. He doesn't crave the spotlight or demand to be the alpha. He simply produces, consistently, relentlessly, and at an elite level. He'd be the Robin to Guerrero's Batman, the Pippin to his Jordan, the perfect Ian to Toronto's offensive Yang. The narrative shift, Toronto as destination, not leverage for years. Blue Jays fans endured a painful pattern that became almost ritualistic in its predictability. Big-name free agents would express interest, take meetings, listen to Toronto's pitch, then ultimately sign elsewhere, having used the Blue Jays offer as leverage to extract better deals from American teams. The reasons varied: tax implications, border concerns, market visibility, family preferences. The result remained constant: disappointment, frustration, and the nagging feeling that Toronto would forever be baseball's bridesmaid, never the bride. Nightengale believes that narrative is changing fundamentally, and the evidence supporting his assessment is compelling. The recent World Series appearance, despite its heartbreaking conclusion, has altered perceptions across baseball in ways that transcend wins and losses. The chemistry this team displayed throughout their playoff run, the electric atmosphere at Rogers Center, the passionate fan base that turned every home game into a playoff atmosphere. These factors are opening free agents' minds to possibilities they might have previously dismissed. According to Nightengale, this shift cannot be overstated. For Toronto to compete consistently for championships, they must become a destination rather than a negotiating tool. They need players who genuinely want to wear the Blue Jays uniform, not those who view it as a fallback option or leverage play. The World Series run, painful as its ending was, may have provided the credibility necessary to cross that threshold. Success breeds success. Winners attract winners. And suddenly, Toronto looks like a winner. Not a pretender, not a flash in the pan, but a legitimate championship organization that's one or two pieces away from sustained excellence. The Bichette or Tucker dilemma. Tough choices define champions. Here's where Nightengale's predictions take an intriguing and potentially controversial turn. He doesn't envision Toronto landing both Tucker and extending Bo Bichette. Instead, he forecasts an either-or scenario driven by financial realities and roster construction philosophy. I think they'll sign Bichette or Tucker, but not both because they're going to spend the rest of the money on a starting pitcher, Nightengale revealed. I think signing a starting pitcher is more important to them than keeping two offensive players. This represents sophisticated roster management that prioritizes balance over star accumulation. Yes, having both Tucker and Bichette would create an offensive juggernaut capable of overwhelming opponents through sheer firepower. But what good is scoring 8 runs per game if your starting rotation surrenders 9? The Blue Jays experienced this truth firsthand during the World Series. They witnessed how championship-caliber pitching separates contenders from champions, how elite starters can neutralize even the most potent offenses, how October baseball is won on the mound far more often than at the plate. Bichette represents continuity, loyalty, and homegrown talent, the kind of player who embodies the franchise's identity. Tucker represents calculated improvement and strategic roster construction, the kind of acquisition that signals championship ambition. Both paths lead toward contention, but through different philosophical approaches. Management faces a genuine dilemma here, the kind that defines franchises for years to come. Do you reward loyalty and maintain continuity, or do you make the cold, calculated decision that maximizes championship probability? There's no easy answer, and whichever path Toronto chooses will reveal volumes about their organizational philosophy. Pitching. The missing piece of Toronto's championship puzzle. Nightengale's emphasis on starting pitching reveals the most critical gap in Toronto's championship blueprint. While the offense proved capable of matching any team in baseball, the rotation showed vulnerabilities when facing elite competition in high-leverage situations. Good pitching beats good hitting. It's baseball's oldest axiom, and it proved devastatingly true in the World Series. The Insider mentioned 2 potential avenues: Framber Valdez or one of the talented Japanese pitchers available this winter. Valdez brings proven postseason pedigree, left-handed deception, and the kind of durability that allows him to eat innings and give bullpens rest. The Japanese market offers high-upside arms with electric stuff and international intrigue that could transform Toronto's rotation overnight. Either path addresses Toronto's most glaring need. Championship teams are built around elite starting pitching. This truth remains constant across baseball history. The Blue Jays possess the offensive firepower and defensive capability. What they require is a true ace, someone who can take the ball in Game 7 and deliver under maximum pressure, someone who can neutralize opposing offenses when the margin for error disappears. Imagine this rotation: a newly acquired ace atop the staff, supported by the existing young arms who showed flashes of brilliance throughout the season. Suddenly, Toronto transforms from offensively dangerous to comprehensively threatening, the kind of complete team that doesn't just compete for championships, but expects them. The financial commitment, ownership's moment of truth, all these predictions hinge on one fundamental question that will define the Blue Jays' competitive window. Will ownership open the vault? The Blue Jays have financial resources that rival any franchise in baseball. The Toronto market, Canada's largest city, a passionate fan base, strong corporate support, can sustain a massive payroll without breaking a sweat. but possessing resources and deploying them are two entirely different propositions. Tucker will command a contract exceeding $300 million. A top-tier starting pitcher requires similar investment. Extending Guerrero Jr. looms on the horizon like a financial iceberg. These aren't modest expenditures or incremental improvements. They represent franchise-altering financial commitments that will define Toronto's competitive window for the next half-decade. The World Series appearance provided ownership with something invaluable, proof of concept. They witnessed firsthand the revenue generation, the citywide excitement, the national attention that championship-caliber baseball delivers. The Rogers Center was electric, merchandise flew off shelves, and Toronto became baseball's center of gravity for those magical weeks in October. Now, they must decide whether to capitalize on that momentum or retreat into fiscal conservatism. Nightengale's predictions suggest he believes ownership will spend, that his confidence implies insider knowledge that Toronto's front office has received the green light to be aggressive. For fans still nursing World Series wounds, this represents the most encouraging signal imaginable. What success looks like. Defining the offseason victory if Nightengale's forecasts materialize, Tucker or Bichette secured, elite starting pitcher acquired. What does that mean for Toronto's 2026 championship aspirations? It means the Blue Jays enter next season as legitimate World Series favorites, not hopefuls or dark horses. It means they've addressed their weaknesses while maintaining their strengths, creating the kind of balanced roster that can weather the 162-game marathon and thrive in October's pressure cooker. More importantly, it means they've demonstrated to their core players, Guerrero, Bichette, and others, that management is committed to winning now, not rebuilding or retooling or engaging in the kind of half measures that waste championship windows. Most crucially, it means they've learned from heartbreak. Game 7 losses can destroy franchises or galvanize them. The difference lies in organizational response. Do you retreat, blame circumstances, and hope for better luck? Or do you identify deficiencies, address them aggressively, and return stronger? Nightengale's predictions suggest Toronto is choosing the latter path. They're not accepting defeat as destiny, but rather as motivation. They're not satisfied with participation, but hungry for conquest. The redemption narrative writes itself. Sports thrive on redemption stories. The team that falls short regroups, improves, and returns to claim the prize they were denied. Toronto's narrative arc is perfectly positioned for this classic trajectory. The heartbreak is fresh, the motivation is visceral, and the pathway to improvement is crystal clear. But redemption requires action, not just intention. It demands bold decisions, financial commitment, and the courage to pursue excellence rather than settle for adequacy. If Nightengale's predictions prove accurate, the Blue Jays are preparing to author their redemption story with conviction and purpose. The winter is long in Toronto, and the memory of Game 7 will linger until spring training opens and the smell of fresh-cut grass replaces the sting of defeat. But hope, genuine, substantive hope, is beginning to thaw the frozen disappointment. Tucker in right field, an ace atop the rotation, Guerrero anchoring the lineup. Suddenly, 2026 looks less like recovery and more like revenge. The Blue Jays' offseason strategy could define a generation of Toronto baseball, transforming World Series heartbreak into the fuel that powers a dynasty. So here's my challenge to you, Blue Jays faithful. What moves do you think management absolutely must make to transform this heartbreak into championship glory? Do you trust Nightengale's predictions? Or do you think Toronto needs to go even bigger? Drop your boldest takes in the comments below. I want to hear what you're thinking, what you're hoping for, what keeps you believing through this long, cold winter. And if this report got you fired up about Toronto's championship potential, smash that like button, and let's build some momentum heading into what could be the most important offseason in franchise history.